we have to deal with the way the show opened. So the season 4 finale was Zoe Bartlett got kidnapped, and it seemed to be maybe, kind of, sort of, could be retaliation for them killing the leader, the
Defense minister.
defense minister of, what's the hell is the name of the country?
Kumar.
Kumar. Thank you. I almost said quorum. I'm like, that's not right. Kumar. And so he temporarily he invokes the amendment and he steps down as president temporarily. We have the Speaker of the House, who's John Goodman, and he's a Republican. And it's so funny because I remember like reading ahead in the Wikipedia, like the staff is struggling with President walk-in, and I'm like, I watched that episode or two that where because it was only a 2-episode arc and then it's done. Then they get Zoe back. They made the Wikipedia made it sound like during the brief time that he was president, like they ended Social Security, public assistance gone. This all the New Deal entirely rolled back. We went back to 1910. And there's Democrats are just killing themselves. Like, why? Why are we even here? It's like, wow, that's not what happened. Like,
No.
John Goodman's character didn't do a whole hell of a lot. Like we have a sheriff here in Florida. I know Florida, Florida man and gators and meth gators and all of that. The thing that you really should pay attention to is Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, who once said the reason why we shot 1,000 bullets into a house was because we ran out of bullets. This guy,
These people.
Polk County, baby, come visit it someday. Avoid the meth areas. But
are there any non-meth areas in Polk County?
Legoland. Just go straight to Legoland, like parachute in. But he's kind of like President Grady Judd. He's when the story breaks about them shooting the defense minister of Kumar, he's just like he took no shit from anybody. He was like that. They're all kind of wringing their hands, and Bartlett, especially because of what happened with Zoe, which I also have to address with him and Abby. He's just just tearing his clothes asunder, and just really struggling with the weight of it all. And there's Big Dick walking, going, "Yeah, I killed him again." Like Jesus, like President Steve Austin.
And that's the bottom line.
And that's the bottom line because the Republicans say so. But it takes about 2 episodes for them to get Zoe back, and I was happy it wrapped up as quickly as it did. What did you think of the walk-in transition and this getting Zoe back and all of that, Andrew?
I thought it's interesting. Like there's 2 elements that I think about with this, and I want to also respond to what you were saying. I think a lot of the panic that the staff had that they were portraying on the show ended up, of course, not being anything policy related, but I think it was all, for lack of a better word, it was PR related, it was image related, where they're talking about even that first press conference before they get into the Kumar stuff, and Bartlett standing off to the side, and I think it was Josh who said he looks small.
Yeah.
Because there is that degree of the imagery around a president. And I mean, we kind of had a lot of conversation about this in the last 4 years regarding Biden and things like that, where, is the president projecting competency and strength and abilities and things like that.
Let me do a real world. Let me interrupt just to do a real world analog. The difference between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
As talented and as genius as Jimmy Carter actually was, he did not project an air of competency. Then there's Ronald Reagan, who was an actor. So he's a fictional cowboy, but then he comes into office and immediately gets the Iran hostages back, which is a whole other thing. And I don't want to.
Oh yeah, that's a whole thing.
But it was awfully convenient. But it lended itself to his mystique as the larger than life cowboy hero president.
Yeah,
and then Ronald Reagan rolls back all of these policies regarding like regulation.
Yep.
And rolls back a lot of economic policy and basically says, all right, those of you, with those of you in the business world, those of you in the investment class, have at it. It's the Wild West now. And because smart people with a lot of money are allowed to make exponentially more money, they were like, he's a hero. And so he gets projected as being bigger than what he really, really was, versus Jimmy Carter, who gets projected as being worse than he really, really was. That's what they're kind of aping with Martin Sheen and John Goodman.
Yeah, exactly. It comes into an imagery thing, and when you get some of the conversations going on between John Goodman and the characters, you find out he's quite a decent guy. Like, you have the discussion between him and Debbie, the secretary, about who was your favorite president, and it's like they're both Truman fans. Or no, yeah, they were both Truman fans, right? It was Truman or Eisenhower. It was Truman. So I think that was interesting. Again, it's that how is our imagery of the president being affected? How are people going to perceive this? Because on some level, this is it's never happened in reality. This would be as exposed as a president has ever had. Because it's like, yeah, we've had cases where presidents have had children die in office. We've never had one taken hostage by a potentially foreign adversary. Right. So it's a whole other kettle of fish.
I think the point that gets made, and I'm going to draw you in, Jesse, with a very specific question, so stand by. But I think the point that gets made is something that I've actually thought a lot about and talked about somewhat, is if you live in Israel, the threat of dying, the threat of being killed by terrorists is a daily thing. It is very present. In Israel, there was car bombs, pizza places being just blown up, buses being blown up. People continue to live their life. They continue to make expansions into Gaza and the West Bank. Israel continued to exist, but but that was despite the fact that at any given time, the people that they shared that land with were trying to kill them on an ongoing basis. But in America, if you go back to your history classes, the thing that has always protected this country and made it able to be as successful as it's been was it's protected by two oceans.
Fireproof house.
Yeah, the neighbors to the north and the neighbors to the south aren't strong enough or don't have the desire to launch land invasions into the United States. At least not at the moment. Things could change momentarily with Canada. But currently...
Well, I got Lester over my shoulder here, and he's ready to go, man.
I see that. But, Europe, Africa, Asia, they're all on top of each other with the ability to cross over land. And in America has always been protected by its two oceans. And then something like 9/11 happens. This is the analog I'm talking about. The Zoe Bartlett kidnapping. It reminds you that we now live in an age where nobody is safe. And this could happen at any time and anywhere. We know the oceans are no longer relevant. That is, no pun intended, quite the sea change from how this country developed. And we did not deal with it well. And the show really does point to that. Like, we don't... For those countries, for those areas that have, developed through time with the ever-present danger of an invasion or an attack of some kind, they're used to it and roll with the punches. This country doesn't quite know what to do with it. It hasn't happened all that much.
Right.
Did you want to respond to that, Andrew, before I go over to Jesse?
I think that's a really valid point, and I think that kind of sets up one of the big arcs for the season, which is, where does Bartlet go in terms of, and I mean, obviously, like the national element of it, but also the personal element of like, how does Bartlet react to everything based on this? Because I think there's a big portion
those
of this
scenes with him in the national security where there's like no good options ever.
Yeah. Well, like the entire thing though, like, I mean, I think kind of the first half of the season is Bartlet getting his groove back.
Yeah.
And then
let
the
Bartlet
end of
be
the
Bartlet,
season,
baby.
Sorry?
Let Bartlet be Bartlet, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And it's him trying to figure out, reconcile with some of this stuff. And by the end of the season, he's presented with a conflict that, again, directly ties back to what happened and mentally ties back to him on what happened on the season before.
Jesse, I would like to get your expert analysis on affairs in the Middle East, because I know that's no, I'm just kidding. I would like you to weigh in on the human element, because what comes out of this, and I think if I had to hazard a guess, this touched you in a way that it didn't quite resonate with me, but I recognized it. So Bartlett, in a previous season, there's that line that lives rent free in my head. Now, this is the worst part of your liberalism. There's John Spencer, Leo, telling him, "You have to do this. It's gross. It's not what we should be doing, but we have a moral imperative to be immoral." Okay, and so he does. He makes the hard choice. That's what presidents do. And a season or so later, his daughter is kidnapped, and it might be for that reason and that reason alone.
Right.
And Stalker Channing has the luxury of just being an angry mom. She's not an elected official, though she seems to think she is at times. She's not a foreign leader. She's not a foreign ambassador. She's just a mom, and her reaction to Jed is that of betrayal. Like, you did this thing that had an unexpected result in our daughter being kidnapped, and I can't forgive you for it. And then he then has to live with the broken heart of a man who disappointed his wife and isn't feeling loved by his family when family means so much to him. Like, if I had to be a human and actually empathize with any part of this show, it's that feeling of I did my duty and I'm paying over and over. I am being punished I'm being punished over and over and over again because of it. This won't stop. And, woe is the president, whose heavy head wears the crown. So I just want you to react to all of that with the family element.
I about interrupted you because I wanted you to explain what the thing was that he had done. Because the way Jed looked at it, when he had to make the decision to kill that representative of Kumar, he had to weigh protecting the citizens of his country by murdering somebody or giving the go ahead to murder somebody.
Right.
Now, where Abby comes in is somewhat understandable. At least I thought it was. I hated the fact that she resented him for the decision. Obviously, this is what, her daughter has been kidnapped because of what happened. But I think the big thing is that she felt betrayed. Because he made this decision without talking to her. And sometimes you have to make those decisions without talking to her, without talking to your wife, because you are the president of the United States. But she realizes that he had somebody murdered, and unfortunately you reap what you sow sometimes. And she definitely, there was parts of me where I was like, I understand why she's pissed. I mean, my notes were like, she is going to tear him apart. But she was so grief-stricken and worried about her own daughter, she couldn't. But I feel like there was a moment after they finally got Abby back, and I think she says that later on in the season. Oh, yeah, I said Abby. Once Abby got Zoe back, once Zoe came back, she says later on in the season that, ever since that happened to her daughter, she has decided, it seems like she's just decided, damn the consequences. So it changed her. And of course, watching Bartlett have to deal with, number one, it bothers him to have made that decision in the first place to have somebody killed. He wrestled with it, making the decision initially, and then having to deal with the after effects of it hitting. I mean, at home, it hit home. His daughter was abducted. His wife is now torn apart by this one decision that he made. And yeah, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And that's the phrase that went through my brain as well. It's like, you have to make these decisions and you have to live with them. the fact that he stepped down, from the presidency, it took us, took a step back and let the speaker, man, that whole interaction where like they're looking for Zoe and I cannot remember her name, but somebody approaches Leo, I think, and Leo and her are talking and she says, if she dies, his ratings are going to go through the roof.
Yep.
And I was like, you're dealing with such a human element, a crisis, a very personal crisis. And then you have the political way of looking at it. How's it going to spin? And that is just one of the stark contrasts of just one single horrible event happening, how it could appear to other people versus how it affects you. And that's one of the great things that this show shines a light on.
And maybe I'll add on one thing really quick, just to Jesse's point, is talking about Abby. Like, I mean, Abby's sense of betrayal extends beyond the president. Like, it extends very specifically to Leo, but I think at that point, she's done with the entire White House apparatus. There's this line between her and CJ where CJ says to her, ma'am, we're very happy to have you back. We miss you. And she says, CJ, don't take this the wrong way. I don't miss you.
Right.
And that's a lot of where it's like, I'm done with having my life controlled by the whole political apparatus around me and everything along that line.
I don't think the Carter girls ever got over being the president's daughters.
Really?
Yeah, I think they struggled with it. I don't remember if Ronald or Nancy Reagan's kids were ever affected by his presidency. I know Chelsea was. This country was cruel to her. She was a kid when Bill Clinton was president, and she was an awkward teenager. She's grown into her face. She's a nice looking woman now, but she, like many of us do, went through awkward, sort of misshapen head teenage years. And it's one thing to go through that privately, among friends and family. And, especially back then, you didn't always have cameras on you. This poor girl had to grow up and go through puberty on live television. And God bless her, she survived it. And I think she's doing all right for herself. But those are some rough years for Chelsea. I think that the Obamas learned from previous presidencies to keep the fucking kids, away from the press as much as possible. Because I don't remember hearing a whole lot about them.
Yeah, no, they were. I think after the whole Clinton thing, I think the following presidencies definitely kept the kids much more out of the spotlight.
Yeah, it's not easy. As much as we're constantly filming ourselves doing nothing now, guilty. But yeah, it is typically not easy growing up in the spotlight of mainstream media, and it kills lesser mortals.